Hey guys, for today's project I'll be showcasing how I made a simple storage rack using some Mdf boards and also some wood which serve as the stand of the storage rack. So the stand, since it was wood, I had to do the joinery from a local carpenter. So he had to make the stands for me because I'm not good at joinery work. So this is just a simple tutorial of how he made the stands using the wood. If you're interested in seeing more of my videos, please don't forget to subscribe and also click on the notification bell so as to get notified whenever I post a new video. As you had seen earlier, I had my Mdf board cuts from a local carpenter, or it's a local wood shop. So they had the machines to cut these Mdf boards into the sizes that I needed. So the sizes of the Mdf boards that I used to make the storage rack, I'll put the measurement in the description box. So this is how I made the boxes which will serve as the storage part. I did my marks so that the Mdf boards can fit in perfectly to make a perfect square for my storage rack. To join the Mdf boards, I had to use a professional wood glue called Ponal. It's available in any local hardware near you if you are located in Kenya. So if you're in another country, you can just use any wood glue available. So to make it easier to apply, I had to put it in a bottle so that it can be easy to apply onto the Mdf board or onto the small surfaces. So once I applied the wood glue, I went ahead and placed the Mdf board onto the side that I needed. So for easier adding screws or for easier joining, I had to use my staple gun to help me hold the Mdf board in place so that it can be easier to add in screws, especially on this side because it's a small size. If it was a bigger board, it's normally easy, but for small ones I tend to use these staple pins to hold the Mdf boards in place for easier adding in of screws. I did the same thing onto the other side and also used the staple pin to hold the Mdf in place. Once I was done, I went ahead and made some pivot holes so that it can be easy to add in the screws. So I had to find a place where I will make the pivot holes. And one thing guys, I made a mistake is making the pivot hole so close to the edge of the Mdf board. So this makes the Mdf board crack while adding in the screws. So I would advise kindly just try and make the pivot holes a bit far end of the edge of the Mdf board. Once I was done, I went ahead and added in the screws onto the board. As you can see, kindly be keen and see what happens, what I was meaning by making the pivot holes at the far edge. So while adding the screws, you can see the boards cracked. So this is not good, so you have to try and put the pivot hole a bit far from the edge. So I went ahead and added the screws all around to secure the board onto the side of the other board. If you are keen, you can see I used two different types of boards. So I used a 3/4 and a 1/2 inch Mdf board, but you can use the 3/4 or the 1/2, but I'll prefer using the 3/4 because it's a bit thick and also strong enough to make the storage racks. For those who are watching this video for the first time, my name is Roxy. I normally do simple home decor DIYs. If you're interested in seeing more of my videos, please don't forget to click on the subscribe button and also on the notification bell so as to get notified whenever I post a new video. I did the same thing on the other side, just as I did on the first side, so I had to add in the bolts, then make the pivot hole so as to make it easier to add in the screws. After joining the bolts all round, this is how my 4 storage racks turned out. This is a client's order, so she's requested for a simple storage rack that she can use to store her perfumes and also her body lotion, so that's why I preferred making this small size. To cover the pivot holes on the side of the storage rack, I had to use a body filler. The contact of where you can get this body filler, I'll put the contact in the description box. It comes with a small hardener, so I had to get a small service whereby I will mix the hardener and also the body filler. The body filler is a bit smelly, so if you can try and use it from outdoor, it will be much better. So I just had to start with small amount because it dries really fast. Then I added a small amount of hardener. As you can see, just a pea size of hardener is enough to make the body filler cure very fast. So after mixing the hardener and the body filler, this is how it should look. So to apply it, you have to have a spatula, but I didn't have a spatula, so I had to use a foam board to do the work. It did the same work as the spatula because it was a bit sharp. So just use small amount of body fillers onto the pivot holes and scrap off the excess so as to make it easier to sand off once the body filler dries. I had to add the body filler all around the pivot holes so as to make sure my storage racks don't have any holes at all during the finishing process. Once the body filler dried, I went ahead and sanded it off using a rough sandpaper. So I used a P80 sandpaper for this purpose to sand off the excess body filler, and this is how it turned out. On to the next part, I added the primer onto my storage rack, so this makes it easier to identify any fall onto your boards. So first you have to apply the primer first before proceeding to the next part. To treat the rough surface of the MDF board, I had to use a NC putty, so I had to use my fingers to apply it, then use a spatula to spread it uniformly onto the rough sides of the MDF boards. So this helps it to give it a smooth finish onto the sides which had been cut by the machine. And also you can use it to fill in some small gaps, not the bigger ones like the ones we filled using the body filler. I was doing the application on the outside, that's why you could see some flies, so don't worry, just the smell of this putty attracts the flies and also some small insects. Once the putty had dried, I had to sand it off using a P100. That's the number of the sandpaper, or you can use a P120 to scrap off the excess putty onto the sides of the board. So you have to make sure the excess putty is off so as to avoid having some uneven finish while painting the boards. After sanding off, I went ahead and added the last coat of the primer before adding in the paint that I needed to paint my storage rack. So this is how the 4 pieces turned out. You can see you can't see the lines whereby the 2 boards have joined, so that's the effect of using the putty. It makes it not visible. So once I was done, I went ahead and started painting it white. So I had to start with the first coat, and I had to paint it each coat at a time. So to avoid the dripping in of the paint, you have to apply each coat at a time and let the coats dry at a duration of maybe 30 minutes, because this is a fast dry paint, before adding another coat. On to my returning subscribers, I'd love to say thank you so much, guys, for supporting Rock Cinemas by watching my videos and also sharing them with your friends and family. Thank you so much. The storage racks are dried. This is how they turned out. So I had to use like 4 coats of white paint to apply on the storage racks. And also onto the wooden part, I didn't show how I prepared the wooden part. I just used a clear varnish to paint the wood. I didn't use any paint, just use the clear varnish. On to the next part is adding in the storage racks onto the side of the wooden rack, not the wooden stand, sorry. So to get the exact spacing, I had to take some measurements. So for the top part, I had to give an allowance of 10 centimeters. So this is an allowance whereby before the first rack starts, so I had to give an allowance of 10 centimeters. So I'll put the measurements that I used for this whole project in the description box for those who are interested in making a similar storage rack. To join in the points, I had to use a piece of board to make the line. I did the same thing onto the lower side. I gave it an allowance of 10 centimeters, just as I did onto the upper side of this storage rack. Then used a piece of board to join in the points. After that, I went ahead and placed in the first storage board. So from this storage board, I took another measurement so as to know the spacing that's supposed to be left between the first storage box and also the other storage box. As I had said earlier, I'll put in the measurements in the description box for the spacing that I made on these projects. To support the storage racks onto the wooden support or on the wooden side, I had to use some small screws and also some pieces of connectors. So I had to use these connectors. They are 1-inch connector. I got them from a local hardware. So these connectors will help me attach these MDF boards onto this wood easily without adding in the screws onto the sides of the storage racks. To make it easier to screw them down, I had to first start by screwing down the connector onto the back of the MDF storage boards. So by doing this, to make it easier to add in the screws onto the wooden side. For those who haven't followed me on my social media accounts, I'll put a link to my Instagram page and also my TikTok page so that you can follow back and see some of my short videos that I normally post on my TikTok and also on my IG page. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed onto my YouTube channel. I had to take enough time to make sure the measurements doesn't change onto the top parts, so to avoid making the racks look like bent or not in a straight position before adding the screws onto the wooden parts. So I had to make sure they align perfectly and the measurements are equal on the upper sides and also on the sides of the wooden parts before adding in the screws onto the back part. Once I was done, I went ahead and added the screws to secure the storage box onto the wooden sides. I did the same thing onto the other side, made sure I had placed them onto the right position so as to make sure the spacing is perfectly correct or it's evenly spread onto these wooden sides. After adding the screws onto one side of the wooden support or the wooden side of this storage rack, I went ahead and did the same thing onto the other side. I had already made some markings so as to make it easier to add in the connectors onto this other side. So I'll put the measurements so that it can be easier if you want to make an exact storage rack. I added connectors on this other side, and this is how our beautiful storage rack turned out. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this simple DIY tutorial that I made for this beautiful storage rack. It's simple and elegant and also easy to make. If you're interested in such, you can contact me for those who are in Kenya. And to watch more of my videos, don't forget to subscribe. Bye bye, see you next time for a new video.